Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. The Honorable Judge Dredd now presiding. This is On Trial, and I am your prosecuting attorney for the evening, Mr. Mark Radulich. On the docket tonight is Disney's The Three Musketeers, the 1993 live-action film starring Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, Chris O'Donnell, Oliver Platt, Tim Curry, and Rebecca De Mornay. And joining me on this journey through yet one of the 5 zillion Three Musketeer movies that are out there is your defense attorney, Mr. Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
Harvey Specter for the defense, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everybody. And, Lady Jet Bear and Jet Cub are away from the Fortress of Shaunitude on an errand right at the moment. Overwatch League happens to be, as of, just about 2 hours from now, on a break between stages once the All-Star game ends. So since I've got nothing else to do, let's talk about the Three Musketeers.
Let's talk about the Three Musketeers.
Yes.
So this one... many of our shows are interconnected here in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. We've got a lot of synergy going on. But this one comes out of the clear blue fucking sky. It is connected to absolutely nothing. It literally went on an open date in the calendar. And I'll tell you what, we're lucky that I planned my calendar a year to 6 months out in advance and didn't know that The Big Bang Theory was ending tonight, or we might have been talking about that. Well, I might have been talking about that. Sean would have been ridiculing me from afar. However,
I thought my heart felt about 10 pounds lighter this evening.
That being said, this was a special request from friend of the show coming from our Canadian office, Mr. Andrew Graham, who I asked him, why did you want us to do this? And he said, and I quote, "Well, aside from being a personal favorite, I think it's a perfect on-trial candidate, as it's both very flawed and very enjoyable at the same time. It has some great aspects, the villain, the fight choreography, some acting, and some not-so-great aspects, departure from source material, dialogue, some acting, etc. So that's our show. Thank you for joining us. No, just kidding. So we're gonna start with that as a germ of an idea and expound upon it on our own. Once again, I will be picking it apart, and Sean will be defending it. But first, some notes, and for that, Sean, take over.
The Three Musketeers, as you probably gathered from the title, is let's call it a creatively simplified retelling of Alexandre Dumas' classic French novel. Now, we have to reverse our usual order of operations to really understand this one. And that is, I have to start with how the movie has been received overall. Opening on November 12th, 1993, The Three Musketeers grossed $53.9 million on a modest $30 million budget. Enough to top its box office that weekend. And yet, incredibly, bafflingly even, The Three Musketeers currently ranks with only a 31% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. On IMDb, that bumps up generously to a 6.4 out of 10, but let's face it, if we're getting academic with it, that's still a straight-up D. As the only real anomaly is that on Amazon, it currently holds a rating of roughly 4.3 out of 5 stars. What makes that so utterly shocking is the fact that, folks, this is one time I'm not going to be exaggerating just how much I adore this movie. Andrew Graham is a man of taste, and this absolutely 110% proves it. For starters, let's take a look at the cast. This Disney flick reunites the Young Guns duo of Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and places them alongside a very young Chris O'Donnell and the always entertaining Oliver Platt as the titular Musketeers. But hey, why stop there? Just for shits and giggles, let's also throw in utter interplanetary theatrical treasure Tim Curry as the villainous Cardinal Richelieu, a young and beautiful Rebecca de Mornay as Milady de Winter, Gabrielle Anwar, veteran character actor Michael Wincott, eventual two-time Oscar screenplay nominee Julie Delpy, and Paul "Fuck You, I Got Royally Boned" as the Dr. McGann in a dual role. Oh, and also say hi to legendary choreographer Bob Anderson in an uncredited cameo as the King's fencing instructor. And believe it or not, as impressive as that cast sounds just based on their respective resumes, it could have gone any number of ways and probably been just as good. Before being cast as Aramis, Charlie Sheen was actually sought for the role of Porthos, which eventually went to Oliver Platt. Platt himself was approached to play Porthos not only in this version, but in a rival take planned by TriStar that was in development at the same time. In the early going of the film, just to give you an idea how committed they were to make this such high swashbuckling fun as it ended up being, Kiefer Sutherland, Chris O'Donnell, and Oliver Platt all went through 6 weeks of rigorous fencing and riding lessons. Sheen, unfortunately, had to miss his training as he was still filming Hot Shots Part 2 at the time. But it's always fun to take a look at what could have been. Brad Pitt and Stephen Dorff both turned down the role of D'Artagnan before it went to O'Donnell. In other roles, William Baldwin, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Al Pacino, Cary Elwes, and Gary Oldman were also sought out by Disney, but ended up missing the mark. Rebecca de Mornay was considered for the role of Lady de Winter, but eventually dropped out and cleared the way for Rebecca's casting. Oh, and Johnny Depp was also nearly cast, but decided instead that he would rather partner with director Jeremiah S. Chechik to make their own Three Musketeers, with blackjack and hookers, which ultimately fell through. Oh well. In any case, filming ranged from Charlestown, Cornwall, UK, and Castellanzi in Austria. One sequence of the Musketeers are being pursued by guards, used a small woods called Golgotha Falls, and Charlestown is home to the galleon that was used in a night shoot. That's really about all there is to the notes. And again, it's astounding because this movie has everything going for it, even despite having, for the time, what was a fairly long running length of 104 minutes. So, how did this all go wrong? Did it go wrong in the first place? Well, let's find out.
But first, a reading of the plot summary, sort of. In 1625, young but skilled fencer D'Artagnan sets off for Paris, France, in hopes to follow in his murdered father's footsteps and become a member of the Musketeers, the personal guard of the King of France. He is pursued by Gerard and his brothers, accused of blemishing their sister's honor. Ooh. Unfortunately, Captain Rochefort of the Cardinal's Guards has disbanded the Musketeers for the orders of Cardinal, I'm going to butcher this, Richelieu, the King's minister, ostensibly to help fight in an impending war with England. Rochefort informs Richelieu that the Three Musketeers refuse to relinquish their duties. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, Sleepy, Dopey, and Doc. In Paris, D'Artagnan rescues the Queen's handmaidens from their own bodyguards, and after a scolding, takes a liking to one Constance. In the city, D'Artagnan has a series of physical encounters with the Three Musketeers, though he doesn't know they are Musketeers, resulting in a duel with each. At the ruins, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis reveal themselves as Musketeers to D'Artagnan's surprise. Bum, bum, bum. Before they can duel, a captain of the Cardinal's Guards arrives to arrest the Musketeers, along with Captain Marvel. Arrest them! Arrest them! That's a Civil War II joke, everybody. Where was I? Fans of source material would have gotten that joke. The Musketeers kill 4 guards with D'Artagnan accidentally hurls the captain of the guard down a huge cliff. Impressed but displeased at D'Artagnan's involvement, the Musketeers leave D'Artagnan behind after encouraging him to flee and maintain his innocence. When more of the Cardinal's guards arrive, D'Artagnan is captured. D'Artagnan eavesdrops on a conversation between Richelieu and the mysterious Milady de Winter, whereupon he tasks her with delivering a signed treaty to England's Duke of Buckingham. D'Artagnan is unable to see her face before being caught by Rochefort. Richelieu orders him executed for refusing to give up the Musketeers' location, but he is saved by the Musketeers in the ta-da nick of time. As they flee, D'Artagnan reveals Richelieu's plans. They decide to find the spy and get the treaty to prove Richelieu's guilt. During a skirmish, the party splits up. D'Artagnan rides ahead to intercept the spy, but passes out from exhaustion. He wakes in a bed stripped of his weapons and clothes as Milady de Winter tries to seduce him. D'Artagnan speaks freely of his plans, not knowing she's the spy, and she seduces him to kiss her. She tries to kill him, but he convinces her to keep him alive. As her party tries to escape by boat to England, they are confronted by the Musketeers. Milady attempts to run away, but is stopped by Athos, who calls her Sabine. They had been lovers, you see, but he regretfully betrayed her to the authorities when he found out she was branded for execution. The Musketeers retrieve the treaty, and Sabine is sentenced to beheading for killing her first husband, Lord de Winter. Just before she is executed, Athos begs her forgiveness. Moved, she reveals the Cardinal's plans to assassinate the king at his birthday celebration before throwing herself off a cliff to her death. This is the 1993 version of fridging, apparently. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis send missives to rally the rest of the Musketeers. Richelieu and Rochefort hire a sharpshooter. During the assembly, D'Artagnan makes the sniper's shot go wide, narrowly missing the king. Richelieu deflects blame to the 3 Musketeers in the crowd for the attempted assassination. As the 3 face off with the Cardinal's guards, there's apparently somebody on a motorcycle outside Sean's apartment.
That's on my end. Sorry.
As the 3 face off with the Cardinal's guards, men rush to their side and reveal themselves as Musketeers. The Musketeers come out of Doctor Strange's portal, and Athos yells, "Avengers assemble." The 2 forces battle as Richelieu takes the king and queen hostage, shooting Aramis in the chest before fleeing to the dungeon, where Athos and Porthos in pursuit. D'Artagnan duels Rochefort and is disarmed, as Rochefort gloats about having killed D'Artagnan's father. Constance passes his sword back, and D'Artagnan promptly kills Rochefort. Athos and Porthos arrive just as Richelieu's boat leaves on an underground river. Although his plans are foiled, Richelieu claims he will be back. The boatman then reveals himself as Aramis, his crucifix having stopped the bullet. Aramis attempts to apprehend the cardinal, but King Louis stops him to punch Richelieu himself, knocking him into the river. Wah, wah. The Musketeers are reinstated by the king, and D'Artagnan is offered anything he wants. He chooses to serve Louis as a musketeer. Outside the Musketeer headquarters, Gerard and his brothers arrive and challenge D'Artagnan to a duel as we come full circle. Porthos reminds him that Musketeers not only protect the king and the country, but also each other. Gerard and his brothers then are chased off by the entire Musketeer division. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Alright, let's talk about this. You know, I'm not one to point a finger at people who in turn point to something in their youth and say it was a wonderful thing and I have fond memories of it. I'm sure earlier this year, when I was going on and on and on and on about Judgment Night, there were some people who ask themselves, what is he making a big deal about? Because Judgment Night was a movie from when I was in high school, and it brought me fond memories. So I'm not going to criticize people for adoring this movie. If you were young and impressionable when you saw it the first time, and it excited you, and it presented a young you with the sense of adventure that you were looking for in the cinema, kudos and full credit to you. That's fine. And enjoy this, and you should enjoy this movie and multiple viewings of it. But strictly from a craft point of view, and having watched it in 2019 and having no sentimental attachment to it, this movie is crap. This has got to be. Let me tell you something. I know sometimes I have to read the wiki because I either fell asleep or didn't understand what I was watching. This is the first time I read it because this was so unmemorable to me that I couldn't tell you what happened in this movie, and I was awake the whole time for the first time in God knows how long. I watched every minute of this movie. I was awake and alert for every minute of this movie, and yet it left zero impression on me. The performances of Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, and Oliver Platt are fine. I mean, they've got some pretty thick plot armor on, and this is definitely plucked from the tree that produces 90s movies where the good guys are just too cool for school, and the villains are bumbling retards, except for the main one, who's some relative of Darth Vader. But Chris O'Donnell, this poor guy, he gets ridiculed for his part in Batman Forever as Robin, and then even worse so, his part in Batman and Robin as being a terrible Robin. It's just being the worst. And you would think, oh, well, that's the director's fault. That's Joel Schumacher. But I'll tell you, I'm starting to see more and more that Chris O'Donnell is just a shit actor. He's terrible in this. To the point that it takes, this is supposed to be, to a degree, a period piece, and he takes you right out of it. I can kind of buy Sutherland and Sheen and Platt as Musketeers of that era. Chris O'Donnell looks exactly like he's an actor who rode onto set on a horse. I mean, he's too cutesy. He's too. Gosh.
I just want to say, I want to visit the Infinity Stone forged timeline in which Jean-Claude Van Damme was somehow reading for the part of D'Artagnan.
Back to O'Donnell. He's got that doe-eyed, pinup boy look about him. In a movie that presents the Musketeers as gritty sword fighting, defend the king, tough guys. They're ale swinging, sword swinging, defending the king, tough guys. And here comes Fancy Boy, and he's like, I want to be a musketeer too. And that may have been the intention, but it really doesn't work. And there are other times that thing kind of does work, where you have someone going on this journey who starts out a way and ends up another way. It doesn't really work here. And it doesn't work because O'Donnell can't pull it off. Part of this is the fact that it's way too Disney-fied. There were a lot of deaths in this movie. People are shot and stabbed at a pretty alarming rate. And I don't know if you know this, but if you're ever shot with a gun with bullets, you will bleed, ladies and gentlemen. You will bleed blood. I don't know if you know that or not. I don't know if the people at Disney know that, but people who made this film seem to have forgotten it. That if you are run through with a fencing sword, or you are shot with a musket, you will bleed. There will be blood. Go watch Glory, okay? Denzel Washington, Matthew Broderick. People are shot with muskets left and right in that movie. They bleed everywhere. I mean, like, I get... Tonight, we saw a trailer for the live-action remake of Aladdin, and my wife scoffed at it, and she said, why? Why does Disney feel like they have to just remake everything that they've done before, that they had success with in their animated department? And I said... Well, imagine you have this really valuable thing in your house, but you've locked it in a trunk, and you're not doing anything with it. But if you actually took it out of the trunk, shined it up, and went and did something different with it, it might actually make some money. Would you leave it in the trunk, or would you do that? And she said, well, obviously I would do that. I'm like, well, what do you think? Disney's a multi-billion-dollar company. It might not have been in the 90s. It's the Disney Films division kind of had some hard times, if you will. But nowadays, it's a multi-billion-dollar company, very successful. It's the most successful studio with all of its minor studios that they've bought: Lucasfilm, Marvel, Pixar, etc. So my point is that I can see why Robin Hood, the Three Musketeers, and some of these grand old tales get remade over and over and over again. One, the notoriety. People know what these are. They've been a part of the culture for decades. But also, so it's an easy IP to do something with, if you're trying to save a buck. So I get it, but sometimes Disney, in their effort to create family fare, doesn't do itself any favors and shoots itself in the foot. So again, even though this is a Disney / Caravan Pictures movie, it goes too far to one side. It goes too far to the family friendly, to the point that it takes a lot of the stakes out of the movie. It takes a lot of, like I said, you have warring factions and people being shot and stabbed all over the place. And people just kind of do like a stage acting jump to one side, and fall over. And then they cut away really quickly. I'm not asking for them to make the John Wick version of Three Musketeers. I'm not asking for a Saw-level bloodbath, but there should have been some effort to either reduce the violence in the movie or shoot it in a way where someone watching this and going, why are they doing close-ups of people being shot and stabbed and you don't see any effect of this other than the person falls down? It's like the worst pro wrestling you've ever seen in your life. It's like if you've ever watched like a Botchamania video and a guy or sometimes the WWE where somebody just takes a swing at another wrestler, they miss by about a week and a half and the guy falls down anyway. There's a lot of that in this movie. So, ridiculous amount of nonviolent violence. Chris O'Donnell can't act for shit. Your leads are too cool for school to the point where I never buy that they're ever vulnerable, so it's kind of boring to watch them. The movie itself is not memorable, except for one thing, and I'm sure the defense will bring this up because everybody else does. Tim Curry's amazing. But Tim Curry's amazing. And Tim Curry's amazing. So Tim Curry's amazing. And the sky is blue. What you're saying is... Then the sky is blue and rain is wet. We got it. It had been more memorable if Tim Curry, fucked the movie up. Then I might have remembered what happened. The prosecution cedes the floor to the defense.
All right, so let's start with this whole Chris O'Donnell issue. Because, yes, I realize that he was thrown into this movie because he was expected to be an endearingly baby-faced, comedically inept sidekick. That is because, although his actions do indeed drive the movie, it is not his movie. He is there to be the spark that ignites the hijinks of Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. The twine that ties them all back together, that ignites the resurrection of the Musketeers from the grave. So, given that fact, I have to ask, considering that they would have been considered higher-powered stars at the time and actually potential distractions from who they clearly meant to carry the movie, would Brad Pitt or Stephen Dorff have really been better for the role of D'Artagnan as written here? I mean, after all, as we've acknowledged, those were the two actors who were also in consideration. I posit that they really wouldn't have been. I mean, quite frankly, thinking of Stephen Dorff, he really probably would have been a better... let me think on it. I got to flip a coin here. In an alternate timeline, I might have put him up as Aramis. Maybe. Because in the right roles, he shares Charlie Sheen's roguish appeal, especially before Sheen's give a fuck up and broke permanently. Brad Pitt. Let's see. Well, right around the time this came out, he was... Let's see. What was he coming fresh off? Brad Pitt. Take a look at his filmography. It was early in his career. I want to say that possibly his best-known work might have been Thelma and Louise. But I could be wrong. Loading. Let's go down to his filmography here. Scroll back up. Cursed Wi-Fi.
Do you want me to look it up for you?
The page, no, just the page is like jumping around here. Here we go.
The bell.
Let's see. No, actually, I was not that far off. Up to that point, his most notable starring roles had been in Thelma and Louise and A River Runs Through It. Neither which exactly screamed the kind of performance that was written for D'Artagnan here. So, in that sense, while, yes, O'Donnell, to be generous, we'll say was... he had yet to come into his own? Question mark. He was just right to be a body. Just to be there. You know, he was kind of there to be not the MacGuffin, but the plot device. In the same sense as Rebecca de Mornay, except much less offensively. I'm just going to say that although de Mornay, in her more youthful beauty, delivers a rather swoon-worthy performance, yes, her death is also treated flippantly as a plot device, because up to that point we don't exactly invest a whole lot in her. She's just there to throw herself off the cliff in order to give the Musketeers one more reason to bring Richelieu down. And speaking of Richelieu himself, the thing that I think we will agree on, Curry is deliciously smug and scheming. He is perfectly loathsome. As I said, the man is a galactic treasure. all things considered, he should be sitting in a big plexiglass tube inside Benicio del Toro's space fortress. He should have the Guardians of the Galaxy plotting to retrieve him and return him, because the man just might be a living, breathing Infinity Stone. Yeah, he all right. But let's start putting all of these performances together. Again, you have Curry, who is the quintessential vile villain. Rebecca De Mornay, who is a gorgeous, tempting damsel in distress. O'Donnell is an aw shucks decoy, the pig hostage. And then you've got the rough around the edges, ever so slightly combustible Charlie Sheen, the blunt and rugged Kiefer Sutherland, and the jovial but also charmingly wild Oliver Platt. You know what you have there? You have a swashbuckling hit that would just go over in any given era you chose to release it. Because you also pair all of that with, yes, family-friendly, but still outstandingly entertaining action. Quite frankly, one moment that I remember to this day is just a brief little snippet, Indiana Jones-like as it was, when a henchman is performing all of this adept sword work, and Oliver Platt just stands there for a second, does some mocking waving around of his hands, and then just slices a rope and just brings a rigging down on top of the poor stupid sod. Makes me chuckle every single time. You have some absolutely gorgeous on-location shoots. Composer Graham Revel has just this innate knack for stirring, pulse-pounding scores, and this one in particular ages fantastically. And yes, I admit it's a simplified take on a classic, immortal piece of literature, something that I would hope young children and adolescents at some point might still grow up reading. But then again, what isn't watered down just a little bit for the silver screen, for the sake of pacing, for the sake of the intended audience? Everything gets tweaked just a little bit. And quite frankly, I don't see too many tweaks about this that I can really hold against this movie, especially given who was making it, who it was intended to appeal to, and the fact that it still runs just a little bit on the long side at 104 minutes. I mean, that's short compared to what you would have if you did a full chapter and verse remake of The Three Musketeers. There's a good chance that if you were to do a truly, completely 110% faithful adaptation, something that would make Alexander Dumas, dusty old bones sit up in their grave and say, "Sacre bleu, that was fucking awesome." You would probably have something that might clock in at around 2.5 or possibly even 3 hours. The Three Musketeers is not necessarily a short story. And what you're getting here is you're also getting the cast arguably at their very best. Now, Tim Curry I will set aside as a little bit of an exception because, yes, at this point, he was a number of acclaimed roles into his career. Clue and Legend were far in his rear view at this point. And yet, he hadn't missed a step. He's he's one of those guys like Alan Rickman and Gary Oldman and Patrick Stewart, that just what they bring to the screen, their particular appeal, it's just it's ageless. It kicks Father Time in the daddy bag. And given all of that, and given everything that this movie has going for it, despite some things that admittedly could have been better. I mean, yes, you could have probably gone all out and made the violence as realistic as possible. Could have done that, and had any other studio been in charge, I would have probably chided them for maybe not going a little more Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with it, if you will. If you can bust out Dusty Road, so can I. But again, given the fact that it's Disney, you have to take into consideration that it's more than a little bit impressive just how many flesh and blood human beings actually do die in this movie. I mean, that this was going a bit far for them at the time. You know, so that could have been better. Would someone perhaps a little bit more dashing, who came across right from the get-go as someone who could hold their own with these three grizzled musketeers, have maybe been a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more likable? Yeah, perhaps. But then by the time we got to the end, and by the time D'Artagnan has really had a chance to grow into his heroics, would that place really felt as earned as O'Donnell's D'Artagnan, as that of O'Donnell's D'Artagnan does? I don't know that it would have. You know, since he starts off in such a lowly place, as such a klutz, as someone who you see him holding a sword, and you pray he doesn't stab himself in the dick. I mean, by the end, you get an appreciation for how far he's come and how much of these men's respect he's won. So, in that sense, I can appreciate that. But again, we're getting Charlie Sheen before total flaming pants on head crazy. Kiefer Sutherland again when he still gave a damn, pre Jack Bauer. Oliver Platt. He's always solid in anything he's in, and they kind of needed somebody to be a jokester. And so, you know, who better? And then again, you take a look at that. You take a look at that supporting cast. I forgot until I rewatched this that, God damn it, Paul fucking McGann is in this movie. And if any of you out there are Doctor Who fans who have only watched the new series from Chris Eccleston forward, watch this, watch Paul McGann, and know that this man is proof that there has never, ever in more than a half century been a bad actor to play the Doctor. Gabrielle Anwar, Michael Wincott, Julie Delpy, they all come on and do their job just fine. And so given all of that, given everything that indisputably this actually has going for it, I come to my last point. And that is just pointing out the existence of one version of a story does not somehow diminish an unrelated other. It does not happen. This is something you hear all the time. Why remake it? Why bother? Don't remake it at all. As if somehow As if somehow a remake being out there is going to legitimately sully the first source material. It doesn't happen. It's just a different interpretation with a few separate strokes. It's the old argument of, this movie ruined my childhood because it remade a thing I loved. Said it before. I'm going to say it again. Please clip this and have it on hand to play for anybody who ever utters that phrase or anything like it. If somebody remaking a story that you loved as a kid ruins your childhood fucking sucked. If that's all it takes, you had a depressing adolescence. My heart goes out to you and to probably your parents for raising such a shitty kid. Because, look, it's not like Disney releasing this movie completely blinked all other iterations of the Three Musketeers out of existence.
Didn't even blink their own. Which, by the way, the animated version that they did, where Donald Duck literally turns into a chicken, is hilarious and better than this one.
You know, when I mentioned that we were talking about the Three Musketeers tonight, that was what Lady Jet Bear thought I was talking about.
Oh, that movie's unprosecutable.
It's
amazing.
It's untouchable. But you see, therein lies my point. It's not like this movie is some kind of cinematic Thanos snap that instantly turned every copy of Alexander Dumas' The Three Musketeers to dust and sent it floating away on a fart of a breeze. They still exist. Enjoy your preferences. Savor them. Myself, of all of the versions I've seen, including having read the novel, you know, this and the novel are my favorite versions of it. I just when Mark told me that I was defending it this week, it was an utter chip shot because yes, it's perfect. It's imperfect. Everything Disney made then was imperfect. But this is one of those times that proves that when all of the right elements fall into place, when Disney gets it right, they get it right. I'll leave it to you to close up.
I'm just gonna say, like I said, I find them. I'm usually an ardent defender of Disney, and more so a defender of family entertainment. But I feel like this was one where they took zero risks. There's a comment about this, and I generally don't like these kinds of comments, but I can't help but think, well, this one's kind of true. Is this was less a movie and more of a product? Okay, well, so was Avengers Endgame, but you can be a product and still be exquisite. You can be a product and still be made well. This was kind of a product that I feel like, again, it was like, well, what's cheap what's a cheap IP that we can make a quick buck off of? And that's the thing, is while it was number one that weekend, it did not hold up financially and has not held up over time. If you're looking back with rose-colored nostalgia glasses, I say, please wear your nostalgia glasses. God knows I do. But if you're looking at it with critical eyes, it's Disney just churning out what they thought was, churning something out of the hit factory. And again, as I said to my wife from an earlier point, they've got enough cash to burn at this point, and maybe they did back in the 90s too. I don't know. I wasn't following it that closely back then. That they can throw a lot of poop at the wall to see what sticks. When a greater than average amount of your movies across your studios are profitable, you can have the occasional write-off failure. And considering it was a $30 million budget and it only grossed 53, and God only knows what they made in VHS and DVD and licensing, they've probably more than made their money back on it well after the fact. But, you know, this is a company that can afford to make a safe, unremarkable movie with some actors people like, and it not really bother anybody. And if you're into watching, you know, swashbuckling and adventure, and you're not really, you know, and you're just looking for something to kill time on a Saturday, I mean, you could do a lot worse than Disney's Three Musketeers. But from a critical standpoint, this movie leaves a lot to be desired. And in 2019, I don't think holds up very well. I mean, it's no 2018's Robin Hood or anything. Jesus. But, so, quick commercial here for a show in the future. And now the train has come in.
Yes, there are train tracks by my house.
So the first of the year, the first week of the year, last week of the previous year, I like to do something a little off the beaten path. I like to kind of dedicate a week to something that wouldn't fit into anything else in the rest of the year, as you know, we're trying to keep up on the growing array of streamed television shows that we talk about and movies and whatnot. So this year was Judgment Night. Next year, January 2020, I'm just now adding it to the schedule. On source material, we're going to do Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club 2, which means, guess what, Sean? January 2nd, on trial, Fight Club.
Oh, see, now this is interesting, because for the longest time, that was one of my favorite movies in all of the multi-evers. And there's a lot about it that I still love. However, I also, now that I'm 36 as opposed to my early 20s, I have a few more issues with it than I had back then.
So I loved that movie, and not to give away the store or anything, I just wanted to do a brief mention, but let me say this. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it. That, and I'm interested in the comic book. But I remember this was one of those movies where...
All right, I hate to butt in, but I feel like I misphrased something. I should specify. My problem is not with the movie, because I have to consider that the way the movie was received was not even remotely, I think, what Chuck Palahniuk and David Fincher intended. I think my bigger problem is with the fucking dude bros that I went to college with, who clearly missed the entire goddamn point of the movie.
So this is one of my favorite movies when it came out, but it kind of has that Civil War thing going for it for me, where I loved it to a point, and of course, it was the Mandarin twist of its age, when you realize that, spoilers, Tyler Durden and Sebastian Rizzo are the same guy. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much that I had like a oh, fuck this bullshit kind of reaction to just that in and of itself. It was more of I'm looking back at the movie going, no, some of this doesn't track. You know? Like
again, the thing you have to remember is there's what was intended, what was very clearly intended, and then there's the asinine, completely missing the fucking point reading that the movie actually got from its fans. And now I'm actually kind of excited for us to talk about it, because y'all motherfuckers, y'all know who you are. You've had this coming for over 20 years now. You entirely missed the goddamn point.
Terrific. Well, I'm glad I've excited you. You only have to wait until January 2nd of 2020. So, in the meantime,
Well, I'm also a little bit stunned to learn there's a Fight Club 2.
and 3.
What?
There's a Fight Club 2 comic, which I believe was 10 issues long and collected into one graphic novel, and then there's a Fight Club 3.
I'm going to go ahead and ask, because if I ask her, I'm going to be treated to an unwanted 2.5-hour treatise on them. Has Alexis read them yet?
I don't know. It hasn't come up in conversation.
As far as I know, she hasn't, and for that, I thank Crikey McFuck's Irish lunch truck.
All right. So back to the Three Musketeers. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it. I mean, taking off my prosecutor's hat and just kind of giving a quick conclusion and then plugs. I mean, like, I'm not kidding when I said it was really unmemorable. I struggled with this movie. I'm like, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, gosh, this is making me wish watching Robin Hood, like any version of Robin Hood. I don't care which one. I just, it was a movie that was trying so hard, and yet was obviously brushing up against its limitations, and it took me out of the movie. I was like, it's too clean where it needed to be dirty, and the actors are coming across as too cool for school and not vulnerable enough, and that I really do feel. Like, I'm just like, meh, all right, whatever. I think part of the reason why it doesn't hold up is because they're drawn kind of as superheroes, but now we have superhero movies, and they're drawn 9 out of 10 times really well. So it's like, what is the purpose? What is the point of this movie then? Like, when you don't have working CGI in the 90s, and so your superheroes have to be a little bit more grounded, a little bit more realistic. I can concede to people who love this that, like, I can see the attraction. But, like, you watch a movie like Endgame, and you've got these extremely well-drawn characters by and large, and then you kind of look back and go, well, that was supposed to be superheroes, in the 90s. Like, meh, who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares?
Frankly, I thought Endgame was nearly perfect.
Yeah. All right. Next week, more of Sean and I. We're gonna dust off Long Road to Ruin again, and we're gonna look at the first 2 John Wick movies, because on Damn You Hollywood we'll be reviewing John Wick 3 Parabellum. We've also got Blood Ties on source material and the new Elavidi album, and a special extra TV party tonight. Extremely Wicked, blah blah yakety schmackety. It's the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie. It also has the now departing Jim Parsons. Oh, The Big Bang Theory. How we'll miss you. What a show!
Wow.
What a show! My heart breaks. 10 years I committed to that show. 10 years, and it could have gone on for 10 more. They had so many stories to tell. But alas,
I want to shore you can Jim Parsons into the sun.
But alas, all good things must come to an end. Honestly, they left at the peak of the show. They left on top. This was no Game of Thrones. This was no Last Jedi. This was not subverting expectations. This was television history. Perfection, if you will.
May all their bacon burn.
There's a part of me that believes some of that. There's a part of me that's trolling so hard. And I'll let you all people figure out which part's which. All right. AEW, Double or Nothing, comes to pay-per-view and whatever streaming thing you got going on May 25th. We're going to talk about it on May 26th. That's the 4 Podsmen, which is the 2 Chris's and Jesse and myself. We've got World War Hulk on Memorial Day. We've got the live-action Aladdin, speaking of Disney products, the new Sworn Enemy, and then on Mrs. Hana, I can't say her first name because then it sets off my Amazon Echo.
Alexis. Alexis!
I can't hear you. Nobody, no, in podcast, nobody can hear you scream. She'll be on TV Party tonight as we mostly talk about Game of Thrones and spend a little bit of time yelling at the fans of the show. Take the petitions, shine them up, turn them sideways, and shove them up your ass, people. Jesus. Jesus. And on June 1st, the day before my birthday, the day before I turned 43 years young, myself, Pat Mullen, and Robert Winfrey will rejoin in the three-man booth to do commentary over Anthony Joshua versus Andrew Ruiz Jr. on DAZN. DAZN. In June, we've got a pair of on-trials for you, presumably, barring any unforeseen hospitalizations or calamities. I will be defending both Godzilla 1998, which is the Matthew Broderick movie, and then I will follow that act up with my greatest defense yet, X-Men 3: The Last Stand. So, hope you tune in to enjoy those shows. Sean will, of course, have the, well, someone might say, easier job of prosecuting those two pieces of trash. But I'm gonna find the jewel, the needle in the haystack, the jewel in the Nile. I will do it. I shall present my case, and I will win over the jury. So,
and I am just going to sit back and enjoy it.
All right, Sean. Quick, tell them what's going on with you, and let's get on out of here.
All right. First off, for the record, I love Alexis Hana. She's one of my best friends. But yes, every time we talk about something relatively new, she has a habit of not quite knowing where I draw the spoiler line. So it's become almost a running joke among a very certain circle of us that when she asks, "Have you seen something yet?" I will say, "No, Alexis, I haven't. Shut up. I didn't say anything yet." That was preemptive. But no, she's a fountain of information, and I'm sure that if I were to ask her something about Fight Club 2 and 3, she might even, who knows, for all I know, she might even have a copy laying around or two. But anyway, hey, guess what, guys? Sean is back to streaming. In fact, I made my comeback the other night, playing a few spontaneous hours of Overwatch, and I am going to be back Friday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time, streaming for anywhere from probably 2 to 4 hours. Going to try to play some Overwatch. If they have the servers up and working, I might jump into Apex Legends for a little bit. Not doing anything Saturday, because that's the day when Sean and Lady Jet Bear go off and have some coupley Jet Bear time. Sunday evening, though, I am going to be back at it from 7 p.m. Central Time. It all goes down at twitch.tv/Comer Codex. If you play Overwatch on PS4 and you want to keep an eye out for me, my screen name is Mr. Hungamunga. That's MrHungaMunga. You can also follow me on Twitter at Comer Codex for updates when I go live. Sometimes I just spontaneously get a wild hair up my ass and decide, fuck it, I'm going to go entertain people by sucking at Overwatch. And then I go online and suck at Overwatch. But anyway, that's that for the time being. Thank you to Mark for having me on. Thank you to everybody who tunes in and listens to these mad shenanigans of ours. We always look forward to our next opportunity to offend you. And might I say, never dull your colors for someone else's canvas.
Couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm not going to.
If you can steal my sign-ons, I can steal your sign-on.